All right, welcome to the Saturday Glory Network. Something we're launching here this week, and this is going to be the Calculated Risk Podcast with Kelley Ford, K Ford Ratings, and myself, Tyler Shoemaker. You can find me at T-Shoe Index. Kelley, I'm really excited to do this. I've been a fan of your work for a long time. I know we've corresponded quite a bit, before this kind of came together. So when the opportunity to work together on this came up, like it was a no-brainer for me. So I'm excited to be here with you.
No, absolutely, Tyler. Right back at you. We've been following each other for a long time on social media. We're in kind of the same space with the college football power ratings, which we're going to get a heavy dose of that in this podcast, Calculated Risk. So I'm very excited. It's going to be fun. And anytime you get to talk college football is a good time. When you get to talk with someone who's like-minded like you, it's even better. So I can't wait. This is going to be fantastic. And yeah, let's get into it, man. The 2023 season's almost here. I'm ready.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't believe that week 0 is already up on us right now. It's the summer flew by. I know, when you're busy plowing through numbers and stuff like we are all summer, like it just kind of flies by, and I'm still, scrambling last minute here to get some FCS numbers in that I decided to do here last minute. So I'm working on that. But, just to give people an idea of what they can expect if they're not familiar with us, we both do power ratings from a predictive standpoint, not so much resume based as our primary rating system. However, we both do have most what Kelley calls his most deserving ratings. I do like a resume ranking as well, which really helps us, especially as the season goes on. You get towards the playoff and things like that, and you start having those debates of who's worthy of the 4 spot and who's not, and that's going to be even more exciting as we get into the 12-team playoff next year. But Kelley, you want to just let people know kind of who you are, what your process is like, and what they can expect from us moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. So Tyler, like you said there, been doing the power ratings publicly for a handful of years now. Joined Twitter in 2019 and really started the website kfordratings.com and kind of just went at it full bore at that point. I've been doing it behind the scenes for a while. Friends said, you got to get out there and do this, put your work out there, see what happens. And so we've been doing it now for a handful of years. It's been a lot of fun. The 2 main areas that I'm in, you mentioned it, it's power ratings. So that's forward looking. And then it's resume rankings. That's backward looking. For the power ratings, Tyler, similar to you, I'm sure, it's kind of 2 segments of it. We have our preseason numbers where we're looking at really 3 main inputs. It's returning production. So who are you bringing back from last year's team? How good was your team last year? And who are you bringing back? And then I'm also capturing, Tyler, in that the transfer portal. So transfers in and out. I know some people do that in their recruiting rankings. Some people kind of splice it out differently. I've lumped it all into returning production. I have my scalers, my modifiers, if you will, for if someone's transferring from Georgia to Miami of Ohio, they're going to get a little bit of a bump because the production that they've had in the SEC at the Power 5 level is probably going to translate pretty well to the production we can expect from them at a Group of 5 level in the MAC. Whereas if you're going the other way from Miami of Ohio to Georgia, there might be a modifier the other way, which is slightly minimizing the impact and production that you've had because you're taking kind of that step up, if you will, in terms of the competition that you're going to face this upcoming year. Same thing with FCS to FBS transfers. There's all sorts of things that are getting mashed together. I always talk about how adjusting for schedule difficulty is kind of the art part of this, whereas I very much prefer the science. There's a little bit of art in this transfer portal era, and I'm learning as we go. We're getting more and more data every year. The transfer portal is going to calm down, I think, as we get more used to it. But for the time being, I continue to learn, continue to update the model, back test things in the summer, and we make tweaks and adjustments. But returning production, that's the biggest thing that goes into it. Your recent recruiting. So not only how much are you bringing back and what are you bringing in through the transfer portal, but how well are you replacing that talent that you're losing, whether it's to graduation or to the NFL draft in the case of most of the best teams in college football. So that is, I've weighted each of the last 4 years of recruiting classes that have come in. And I don't just take the 24/7 Sports or the ESPN recruiting rankings. I don't just take those at face value. What I do is I kind of have my own setup behind the scenes where I'm looking at if Ohio State, for example, it's a good example. They've had so much talent coming into that wide receiver room in recent years. It's just 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. If Ohio State brings in a 5-star receiver this year, that's good and that's going to help. But I'm not going to give that the immediacy impact that I would if Ohio State were to bring in a 5-star offensive lineman, an area in which Ohio State could probably use a little bit more help right away. So I'm not just looking at how many stars you've collected. Stars do matter. Stars are important, but I'm adjusting for team needs, and I'm doing that across the board for all 133 FBS teams. So it's a very time-intensive process, but it's something that we do every summer in the off season here as we get ready for the preseason ratings to be finalized here in August, which I'll do again in the next week, get those final numbers updated. The third and final piece for preseason ratings, Tyler, what I'm looking at there is what are your recent K Ford ratings? So every single team every year that plays at the FBS level is getting a K Ford power rating of 0 to 100. 0 is the theoretically imperfect team. Like they are the worst team we've ever seen. They do nothing well, and they are completely imperfect. It's a theoretical limit. No one can actually reach it. On the flip side, 100 is a theoretically perfect team. So, for example, Georgia last year finished the year number one on my power ratings. They had a 99.8 rating. 2 years ago in 2021, Georgia also finished number one. They had a 99.7 rating. So Georgia was very, very good each of these past 2 years, but even Georgia was not able to achieve that perfect theoretical 100. No one will ever achieve that. So anywhere in between then is where everyone's going to fall. 50 is the FBS average. I look at each of your last four K Ford ratings, de-weighting it the farther we go back. So last year's K Ford rating counts for the most in that. 2 years ago, second most. 3 years ago, third. And then finally, 4 years ago, fourth most. That COVID year, 2020, it's still hanging around in the data set. I know we talk about what are we doing with it? What can we make of it? Each year, it gets progressively less and less informative for the preseason ratings, but it is still in there. I feel like that's important to talk about at least for a couple more or another year here. And that's the preseason numbers. We're going to get into what both your preseason numbers and my preseason numbers look like, Tyler. Tonight, we're going to compare it to the AP poll. But then once we get into season, I de-weight the preseason component and we replace it with in-season data, which of course is much more informative. It paints a much better picture of every team. But preseason priors are proven to have predictive power. So I keep them in there all throughout the year. It gets de-weighted every single week and replaced with that in-season data. But some people out there don't use preseason prior. Some people phase them out entirely at a certain point of the season. I'm not here to argue that or to counter those things. I've back tested all sorts of different weighting devaluations as we go throughout the season. The one that I think has proven to be the most predictive based on my back testing is my current approach. I'll continue to evaluate that every year as I do. Tyler, the second thing that I do, though, is the most deserving resume rankings, as you mentioned. I actually find that to be, I get more enjoyment out of those than I even do the power ratings, because to me, I want to talk about who's accomplished what on the field. And so my most deserving resume rankings, they use my power ratings as the engine, but what they do is I'm able to view every single FBS team this year, all 133, through a single lens. So we're looking at every single team schedule through the lens of the average top 25 team and saying, what would the average top 25 team be expected to have achieved against this given team's schedule? So we're normalizing everybody's schedule because schedule difficulty is so vast between Florida with the most difficult schedule all the way down to Liberty with the easiest schedule. There's such a vast difference in college football schedule difficulty. It's not like the NFL where, yes, some teams have more difficult schedule than others, but at the end of the day, team 1 to 32 is pretty darn close in the NFL, whereas team 1 to 133 in FBS, there's a massive gap. I mean, you're talking 50 plus points between the best and the worst on a neutral field. So how do we normalize those schedules? Let's look at them all through the same lens, the average top 25 team. It's very similar to what ESPN does with their strength of record. However, the difference between mine and why I think it's a slight improvement on strength of record, which is a phenomenal idea and how I got the idea for most deserving in the first place, is I'm not just looking at, okay, what's your win-loss record relative to what would be expected, and let's grade that. I'm also looking at your margin of victory and comparing that to what would be expected. So, Tyler, if I'm Georgia, the number one team in the country, and I've beaten Florida, for example, on a neutral field, or that's a bad example because they're playing them on a neutral site. If I'm Georgia and I play, I'm making this up, Ole Miss at home, and I beat them by 21, and then Alabama plays Ole Miss at home later in the year, and they beat Ole Miss by a point, a last-second field goal, they win by a point. Georgia should get more credit than Alabama, not a ton, but slightly more, because you have beaten the same opponent at the same location by more points. You've beaten them more soundly, more convincingly. So it's a small component of my most deserving. It's largely what have you done with your record relative to what would be expected. But I very much enjoy putting that kind of relative strength or a relative margin of victory in there, if you will. And just really quickly, Tyler, I know we're going to get to your numbers and your approach and everything. I just want to share what last year's final most deserving rankings looked like. This is after the conference championship game. So you can see what my numbers suggested the committee's ranking should be. My numbers think the committee got it right, not just the top 4 teams, but actually the top 4 teams in order. You can see going into the conference championship game, I actually had Michigan number 1. I know the committee didn't. I know the AP didn't. I know really no one out there did. My numbers very, very slightly said Michigan actually deserved, based on what they'd achieved, to be number 1 over Georgia. Georgia then wins the SEC championship game against LSU, while Michigan beats Purdue, and they end up flipping there. You can see I had Tennessee at 5, Alabama at 6. I know that was a big point of contention for folks last year. The committee had Alabama 5 and Tennessee 6. Not that it really mattered in a 14 playoff era, but this is what I really enjoy doing. And this is probably my favorite application of the power ratings. Has nothing to do with handicapping or with best bets or with looking forward at all. I like to use it as the engine to go into the most deserving rankings and look backwards. So that's kind of what I'm all about with the K Ford ratings. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it now, at K Ford ratings. I got the website, kfordratings.com, but I'm very excited to be doing this podcast, Calculated Risks, with you, Tyler, here for Saturday Glory. But yeah, man, that's kind of about me, what I do here with the ratings, and I'll turn it back to you to give your background and how you got started in this space too.
Yeah, I love it. You touched on something that I really have tried to emphasize, and that's 2 words that people use interchangeably that I don't think are the same thing. And I want to make that distinction, and that's between ratings and rankings. So the way I break
Tyler.
the way I break it down to people is because, okay, rankings are the order in which you have teams in. But the distinction for me is the rating is the nuance in between those rankings, because you can have 2 teams ranked 2 spots apart, but the rating may be 8 points, and that's a huge difference that changes everything in terms of perception of that team. So especially in terms of like predictability and looking forward. So I love that you said that. I try to make that distinction all the time because those words get thrown around interchangeably, and I don't think that's correct. So I love your process is awesome. I think mine is similar in structure. I think it sounds to me like you get a little more granular, particularly with like the transfer portal and the recruiting rankings. I do reference the 247 composite in my kind of talent score. So the components of my ratings, of my preseason ratings, are similar to you. I look at how what your TSI rating has been in years past. I also, this year, one change that I made this year that I'm really excited about is my development rating, where it's essentially a correlation of what your TSI rating has been relative to your 4-year weighted talent score that I calculate. So it kind of gives credit to like an Iowa or Michigan even, a team that doesn't recruit at an elite level, but the power rating is there every year and earns them kind of the benefit of the doubt. And conversely penalizes, like a Texas A&M, who I notice I do have relatively high. I think they're in the teens for me. But if you were just going strictly off of recruiting rankings, I mean, they're a top 5, top 10 team easily because they recruit so well, but that has not translated to a high power rating. It just hasn't translated in performance. So I wanted to be able to quantify how I can differentiate like the Texas A&Ms of the world and the Iowas of the world that tend to develop a little better. So that's one component of mine. Like I said, the 4-year weighted talent rating is a component of mine. And that's really the gist of my preseason ratings. And then as we get into it, like you said, I will phase those out. I think I phase mine out. I phase my preseason priors out a little quicker than you, and than I think most people do. I think around midseason I should be pretty much 100% with current season data, which I tested with my formula. I tested keeping the priors in last year versus what it was doing 100% with in-season data, and the in-season data looked better. So I'm going to roll with that this year. And again, like you said, you reevaluate, you reback test everything every offseason. So subject to change, but for 2023, that's my plan right now. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of putting our heads together here and giving people an idea. If you use our numbers to for entertainment purposes only to solicit your local FanDuel, then that's great. But I think the more important thing that we want to accomplish here with this show is to give you kind of an expectation of what teams really are from a power rating perspective, and therefore after the fact, like you said, looking back, how did they perform relative to that expectation? And some people use expectation as just like the betting line, but I think more nuanced numbers like we come up with kind of frames the context of the conversation a little bit more sophisticated.
Without a doubt, I agree with you 100%. That's interesting what you found with your back testing with regard to phasing out preseason priors. Again, we're going to do it every summer. We'll continue to refine that process, both of us, and it's cool to get our heads together, like you said, and talk about that. One thing you said there about the entertainment purposes, going to your local FanDuel or whatever you have. I have to say, for the record, and I've said this with other podcasts that I'm involved with, I say it on social media whenever it's appropriate. Given my role, so my full-time job is in college athletics. I work at the Horizon League, which is a Division I conference office. Due to that, I do not and have not ever bet on college football or any sporting event that the NCAA sponsors. I'm not allowed to do it. I actually have no interest in doing it, Tyler, because if I were to do that, I could see the fun being drained out of it a little bit, and I'd be sitting there sweating, a Maction game in the fourth quarter it's plus 13.5, and now it's a 14-point. Like, I don't even want to get into that. I can't because of work anyway. So while people do and have and do use my numbers for those purposes, I am certainly not suggesting that anybody should. I will not be giving out any plays or bets, if you will, because I don't do that. And I'm certainly not endorsing anyone to go do that. But the numbers are out there. They're public. They're on my website. I tweet out things all the time. People can do with it what they will. I do like comparing my projected spread to the Vegas spread. And more times than not, they're very, very close. I mean, they could either be spot on. I'm off by a half point, a point. It's rare for me to be off by, more than a point or two for games. And it's those games that I really like to look at and say, what's going on? Why are my numbers so far off from what Vegas is seeing? Usually there's a simple explanation. Star quarterback is hurt, not playing, what have you, or someone suspended, and Vegas is accounting for that. My raw numbers, I haven't gone in and made manual adjustments for, and there's that. When everyone's fully healthy, when it's not bowl season, so there's full motivations going on, I like to dig into those numbers. I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of that throughout the year, but I just had to give that official disclaimer. I don't bet on college football or any other sport that the NCAA sponsors. Never have, never will, as long as I'm working at the Horizon League, and that's just fine with me. I like to just enjoy the games, but I know betting is one of, if not the most popular thing about college football right now for many, many people. And so by all means, if you enjoy doing that, my numbers are there as a resource, as Tyler, I know yours are too.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing here is we're not going to tell you like, oh, you should go bet this game. But again, we will frame the expectation for you and allow you to use our numbers as a resource to come to your own conclusions and bet how you see fit. So I'm looking forward to it. With that, I think we will move on to the AP poll just dropped this week, the preseason AP top 25. So we're going to throw up a graphic here if you're watching on YouTube with a comparison of my numbers, the T-Shoe index, Kelley's numbers, the K-Ford ratings, and the AP top 25, and just kind of we'll go through here and just kind of pick out what's interesting to us. Where are some big differences between the three, and maybe why that could be. So we'll start off. So number one, unanimous Georgia. I think that's probably a no-brainer. 2, 3, and 4 pretty interesting here. So the AP poll, Michigan's number 2, but Kelley and I both have Ohio State number 2, and there was a scenario where Ohio State was kind of nipping on the heels of Georgia, at least in my ratings, for number 1 in my preliminary ratings that I did back in the spring. As I continued to kind of refine the numbers, Georgia kind of got more and more separation. They're about a 4-point. There's about a 4-point gap from 1 and 2 in my numbers now. So how close was it for you, Kelley, with Georgia and Ohio State there for 1 and 2?
Yeah, it was very close. Actually, the same thing, Tyler. When I did my preliminary numbers back in May, and I was surprised about it, I had Ohio State number 1, and it was very close. And I even when I tweeted out the preliminary 2023 preseason ratings, I even said, Georgia fans, relax. I'm going to keep working on these numbers. More data is rolling in. And I have a very strong feeling Georgia's going to take the top spot. But based on what I had at that point and where I was in my process, the numbers were favoring Ohio State just ever so slightly. I'm still, Tyler, for right now, maybe for the next week or so, on the 0 to 100 scale. I think I'm pretty certain I'm going to be going back to the points per game above or below FBS average here for in-season stuff. I still like doing the 0 to 100 scale for historical comparisons, because basically what I'm able to do then is compare, 2022 Georgia versus 2021 Georgia, which team was more dominant relative to the competition that they faced in that given year. And that's how you get those 99.7s versus 99.8s. So I like that for historical comparisons. But for in-season purposes this year, I think I'm going to go back like I did pre-2021 to the points per game above or below. So I don't know exactly right now off the top of my head what that number difference is between Georgia and Ohio State currently, but their 0 to 100 scale, I have Georgia at 99.6 and Ohio State at 99.5. So they're still very close. Georgia, as I finalize the numbers next week, Georgia's still going to be number one. I've already taken a quick peek at that, but it is close. The AP poll though, Tyler, and listen, I should just give the disclaimer right off the top. I don't put a whole lot of stock in human polls. I just don't.
Same.
And I know the CFP committee is what we have to go by at the end of the year when it comes time to talk about the playoffs. So I respect that. I get it. And I don't think people in the voting in the AP are trying to do anything a disservice. I don't pay much attention to it. I didn't even know it had dropped until someone pinged me and said, "Hey, how does this compare to your numbers or whatever?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that came out today." It is not a surprise to me at all that Michigan is ahead of Ohio State and Alabama in the AP poll. From a resume comparison point, over the last 2 years, Michigan has owned Ohio State and achieved more in the CFP. Well, maybe not than Alabama. They played for a title 2 years ago, but similar to Alabama and more than Ohio State.
Yep.
The problem with what we're looking at in the AP, in my opinion, coming into the year is voters are kind of torn. I don't really know what they're voting for. Are they voting for the best team? Are they voting for who's deserving to be there based on the results of last year? Are they voting on who's going to have the best record at the end of the year? I don't think the voters even know exactly what it is they're voting on. And so that's why, to me, it kind of negates some of the credibility of it right off the top, especially for preseason polls. But I get it. Anyone who's looking at Ohio State and Michigan and their results over the last couple of years, yeah, you're going to put Michigan ahead of them. But for me, in the preseason, we're looking forward. It's power ratings. And as I look at all the things that go into my numbers, as we talked about earlier, Ohio State comes out at number 2 and Alabama's at 3, even before Michigan. That's not a slight, Michigan fans. You're still a really, really good football team. I got you at a 97.9 right now. I mean, you're going to be phenomenal. You're going to be favored in every single game, minus maybe Ohio State at the end of the year. We'll see how that one is. The game, of course, in the big house. So you'll have that home field advantage. It's not a slight. It's just what the numbers say. And listen, you've run the Big Ten the last 2 years. More power to you. We'll see how 2023 goes. I think Michigan's going to be a very good team, but my numbers right now favor Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia on a neutral field against the Wolverines.
Yep. And same here. And this is a perfect example of what I mentioned earlier with the rankings versus the ratings thing. So Michigan fans, I'm sure, see this and are like screaming at their phones or at their computers right now because they're number 4 for both Kelley and I. However, again, I would have Michigan favored by 0.5 point right now over Ohio State in the big house. Like, that's how close it is from 2 to 4. So, don't get too worked up about it. It's very close. The top 4 were all close, especially 2 through 4 were neck and neck. So this is, again, not a slight, just worked out like literally we're talking like decimal points almost. So I don't think it's a big deal. I'm curious to see kind of how this top 4 may shuffle, as we get into the year. Looking through here, so you were more in agreement with AP on LSU at number 5. I had USC at number 5. Again, not a huge discrepancy here. I had LSU at 7. Looks like you had USC at 8. So I don't think there's any huge discrepancies here. I think the biggest discrepancy we've got here is maybe Penn State, where the AP poll has Penn State at 7. You're at 9. I'm at 11. So, a 4-spot range here. Do you think that's when I see that, I interpret that as the AP voters are really buying into the Drew Aller stuff without really having seen it or without any type of, in my opinion, earned benefit of the doubt here for James Franklin and Penn State. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, you got him at 11. I am at 9. So we're not too far off, but I think that's fair. Yeah. Drew Aller, 5-star quarterback coming through Penn State. The hype is real behind him. Let's see what they're able to do. I really think Penn State has a CFP caliber roster. The problem for Penn State, in my opinion, is the same problem they've had, honestly, since 2016. If you throw out the COVID year, they struggled that year. I mean, so did Michigan. Lots of teams struggled in the COVID year of 2020. But since 2016, Penn State's biggest flaw has been that they play in the Big Ten East and they have to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year. And this year's no different. So if they can split that series, if they can get either the game at Ohio State in week 8 or the game at home against Michigan in week 11, and they're sitting there at 11-1, they'll have a chance to make the Big Ten championship. Even if they don't, they'll be an interesting team for the committee to consider at the end of the year. But yes, I think this Penn State team is really good. Like I said, I got them number 9. I think this defense is going to be elite. I got them as a top 5 unit. The offense right now for me is top 20. Now, if Drew Aller plays up to his 5-star status and really gets them rolling, that offensive unit ranking could rise as we go quickly here. But yeah, I agree with you on that. Texas is the team, Tyler. If we're looking in that 5 to 11 range, that's the team that stuck out to me. I don't know if we want to comment on Texas at all. I'll get your thoughts on Penn State, but certainly want to touch on Texas after you get some Penn State thoughts in.
Yeah, I looked. So I've got Penn State as the number 17 team in terms of their talent, their 4-year weighted talent. I looked. You said you've got Penn State at number 20 on offense. That's exactly where I've got them. And then defensively, I've got them at 14th. So I mean, again, I think they're going to be a really good team. I am admittedly a little more conservative with their rating, just because. So I explained this, I think, on a show that Mark and I did together, where so with Ohio State and Penn State are kind of in a similar situation with their quarterback. It's going to be a 5-star, but it's going to be a 5-star that hasn't really done anything at the college level yet. But the reason that I've got Ohio State's offense tied for number 1 in the country with USC, and I've got Penn State's at number 20, is because there's a track record there with Ohio State that's not there with Penn State and more specifically with James Franklin. So my numbers kind of reward, if you've done it and proven it and earned that benefit of the doubt, like my numbers it'll bear itself out in the numbers. And that just hasn't been the case with Penn State. They've been excellent on the defensive side of the ball, for as long as I can remember, but offensively, they just haven't quite been at that elite level. So I'm happy to be wrong here. That is a team that I may even, if Drew Aller comes out and is just lighting it up from week 1, like I may be quicker to kind of get their preseason numbers out and be a little faster with adapting to what I'm seeing on the field. But as it stands right now, I'm comfortable with them at 11. I still think that's a fair rating. It's not like I've got them at 23. So I think anywhere around 10 is probably fair. 7, like the AP has, is I think pretty high. But yeah. So you mentioned Texas. This is one of those, like, okay, you and I, the numbers guys, have Texas we both have them at number 6. The AP poll has them at number 11, which honestly was a bit surprising to me, especially when you consider they've got Washington ahead of Texas. They've got Clemson ahead of Texas, the Florida State ahead of Texas. So I was surprised because, I mean, usually every year it's like Texas is back, and then they're not. But this year, you and I, the numbers seem to think that Texas might be relatively back. So what do you think about Texas?
Yeah, Texas is always interesting. They're the team that gave me the most grief on Twitter last year, despite the record. So they finished last year 8-4 in the regular season. They finished the bowl season 8-5. They still finished the year-end power rating for me last year, number 7. And Texas, I've talked about this at length a couple different times, so I'll keep it short here. There's reasons for that. Texas played an Alabama team that I had power rated at the end of last year, number 3. A very competitive game. I mean, they were in that game with a backup quarterback, and they were right there. They played them statistically very even. They lost a game at Texas Tech where the numbers suggest Texas was the much better team, but they ended up losing that game. They beat an Oklahoma team, and I get, hey, Oklahoma, I know Kelley last year, they were terrible. They were 6-6 regular season. Like, what are we talking about? From a power rating standpoint, Oklahoma was still a respectable team last year, and Texas beat the brakes off them at a neutral site. Like, all of these outlier type of events happened, and they all happened to the exact same team. So the power rating world, for my numbers and many power ratings out there, liked Texas a lot throughout the year. And Texas, I like what you said there. You had Penn State, their talent rating number 17. I actually have them number 9 in my weighted 4-year K Ford ratings. But if I'm looking at Texas, their weighted 4-year K Ford ratings is number 8. If I'm looking at Texas's weighted 4-year recruiting, they're number 5. And so, they recruit at 5 and they perform at 8. So yeah, they are underachievers. they're not underachievers to the level that the public perception out there is. Everyone loves to hate Texas. They're big bad Texas. They got tons of fans, and if you don't love them, you hate them. I get it. I understand. I'm not saying that I'm a huge Texas fan. I'm not. That's not my team. But the numbers like Texas, and they like them again this year. And if I'm looking at Texas' schedule, Tyler, there's only one game all year that they're a projected underdog right now, and that's week 2. They got to go to Tuscaloosa and take on the Tide. My numbers right now like Texas, or like Alabama in that game, by about 9.5. Other than that, though, I've got Texas favored in every single game that we're looking at. I've got a 21% chance to go 11-1 or better. This Texas team, they're favorites in the Big 12 for me. I say that almost every year, though. I understand. They've got to prove it. They got to earn it. And I've heard other people say this, and I agree with it. If not this year, then never for Texas. Yep. It's only going to get harder next year in the SEC. And so they have to make hay this year. They have to get it done. But it is interesting. You and I both have them at 6 there with the AP at 11. So, yeah, I don't know. What about you? What are your thoughts on Texas?
Yeah, same. And I looked. They finished number 8 last year for me, so right there in that same ballpark. Just one of those things where I had Texas people hitting me up on Twitter last year too. Like, this team's lost, at that point 4 games, right? And it's like that's why we do what we do is to be able to parse through that and give you the reality of the situation. Like, yes, that's why they play the games. And like, that's the fun of college football is like a good team like Texas can go lose 4 games in the regular season. That makes it fun for the sport at large. But from what we're trying to do and to properly gauge these teams and parse through the, like you said, the outliers, like that's the importance of us doing these power ratings is to be able to parse through that.
Final thought there, Tyler, before we move on to the next team. Because you mentioned it and I mentioned the record too. It's important. I've said this before. I know you have as well. It's important to remember for those still listening to this, they're very interested in power ratings. When we're looking at power ratings, you're not looking at win-loss record. Wins and losses are not inputs into any power rating model out there. And if they are, I'm sorry, if your model has it, that's a poor power rating. Wins and losses absolutely are inputs and should be the primary drivers of any resume ranking. And they certainly are for my most deserving rankings. And if you beat Texas last year, you got a heck of a lot of credit because that was a really good by the numbers Texas team. So any Texas Tech, they got a big bump for beating Texas because I know the numbers suggested they shouldn't have, but they did. So Texas Tech's power rating after that game did not go up because they did not beat the expectation from a number standpoint of what I expected going into that game from a performance standpoint, but their most deserving ranking skyrocketed because they beat a really good Texas team. So wins and losses are great, and that's what matters. That's why we play the games, because I can just hear people yelling right now, then why do we play the games? That's why we play the games. That's why I, like I said at the top, like my most deserving rankings even more than the power ratings, but power ratings don't care, and Vegas doesn't care either. That Texas team could have been 12-0 or 8-4. It's the same Texas team that they had, and Vegas would have viewed them the same way, and that's what Tyler and I are doing with our power ratings too. So had to get that in there, Tyler. Hope it wasn't condescending to anybody, but I get that all the time. How do you have that team power rated up there? They have 4 losses because it's not about wins and losses.
Yeah.
Look at their most deserving ranking. It's not in the top 7 like it was with the power rating.
Yep, exactly. That's a great point. Hopefully that will, if you take nothing else from this episode, please take that like we don't look at nor care about wins and losses in terms of the power rating. Again, when we do our resume type rankings, that absolutely will be the main driver. So a huge important distinction there. Moving along through the top 25 here. Washington at 10 for the AP. I'm like, I had to turn my head to find where you and I, I've got him at 16. You're even lower. See, I thought I was low on Washington at 16. Then I looked, you've got him at 18. So we're kind of in the same ballpark there. And I think that's based, again, biased because I've been in my numbers, so I know what I've been looking at, but I didn't see anything in there that said like, yes, this is a top 10 team. I think the AP voters said, okay, Michael Penix is back, Kalen DeBoer's back in year 2, which again, like my numbers like that also, but man, I just don't see it, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like they can't really get stops. So what do you think here in Washington? Were you surprised to see them that high in the AP? Since you've had your head down looking at your numbers for so long, like see them pop up at number 10, like, whoa.
I was actually similar to why I'm not surprised Michigan was number 2 in the AP. I'm not surprised Washington is number 10. Washington's coming off a 10-win regular season last year. They're bringing back their quarterback, as you talked about, second-year head coach. And if I look at their schedule, Tyler, I only make Washington as an underdog in one game. That's week 10. They have to go to USC. I make them about an 8.5 point underdog as things stand right now. That can, of course, change. But I have Washington favored in every other game. Now, 3 games, I have them favored by a field goal or less. That's basically, it's a pick 'em, but their win probability is over 50, just barely. In week 7 against Oregon, absolutely love that game every single year. Week 11, they're home to Utah. I like them by 1. And in week 12, they're on the road at Oregon State, kind of a tricky team this year. I have them favored by 1. So right there's 3 toss-ups just right off the top. That's not even to mention I have them as 5.5 point favorites at Michigan State. So another 1-score game. That's in week 3. They have to go across the country and play in East Lansing. So this team could realistically really finish, anywhere between a 7-win and a 10-win regular season again. For me, as I look at Washington in the preseason, they overachieved for me last year. They were one of my biggest overachievers. They had 2.7 more wins than I expected. That's number 11 out of 131 teams last year on my biggest overachievers list. For me with Washington, remember what the preseason numbers are all about. The returning production's pretty good. I mean, anytime you bring back a quarterback that's his quality as Michael Penix, that's going to be good for you. But if we look at the other components, I have them number 36 in my weighted 4-year K Forward ratings, and I have them number 36, I hope I said, and I have them number 48 in the weighted 4-year recruiting rankings. So their preseason numbers are being dragged down. Yes, they did overachieve last year, so I'm probably not giving them as much credit. I like where you have them at 16. If I could kind of move around manually some teams, I'd probably bump Washington up a couple spots. But we don't do that, of course, for the integrity of the model and the system that we have. So I have them at 18. It's a top 10 offense. I'm very excited about this offense. I have legit concerns about this defense. This defense to me is power rated defensive unit wise nationally. I have them right now just outside the top 50. So if the defense can show that they're better than what I'm projecting and that offense just meets expectations, I mean, being a top 10 unit, that's incredible. They can have a very, very successful year. I've got a 25% chance to win 10 plus games, 9-3, the most likely record for me with Washington. So no, I'm not surprised based on last year and what's going on with that team right now that the AP has them there. But there's my reasons for why I have Washington number 18. And I have a lot of Washington friends out there on social media. They know how I feel. They know how this thing goes. I like Washington. I think they're going to be a good team. Favorite in 11 out of 12. That's awesome. The power ratings need to see a little bit first, at least on my end.
Yeah, agreed. And I just took a quick peek. So their season win total is 9.5. I've got them at about 8.5 wins. I've actually got them as, because of location of games and things like that, I've actually got them as slight underdogs against Oregon and Oregon State, and then as a 10-point dog to USC right now. So I'm with you. I think 9-3 is probably the most likely here for them. And then moving along, slight discrepancy on Tennessee. I think my numbers are a little higher. I've got them at 8. You had them at 11. AP poll at 12. That sounds right. I don't think there's anything too alarming there. Texas A&M.
Go for it. Yeah, Texas A&M, yes. we got a big discrepancy there with Texas A&M. Let's hit Texas A&M first, and then I got 2 teams that I want to just touch on. Doesn't need to be long, but I want to touch on 2 that come out of the group of 5 ranks, so now I've given away what they are. But yeah, let's talk Texas A&M first, and then we'll get to that group of 5 for any group of 5 fans out there. So I keep going first, Tyler. You go first. Tell me about Texas A&M, and because you got them all the way up at 13. I'm at 16. The AP's got them at 23. Listen, let's hear it. Why do you have them at 13?
So this was honestly surprising because, like I said, I expected Texas A&M to be much higher in like an AP type poll because they recruit so well, and that generally resonates with people. When I saw this graphic for the first time that I was the highest on Texas A&M, I was like, man, that says a lot to me because I historically have just been lower because of, again, like my development rating and things like that. And I've just been, even numbers aside, like just my personal opinion, I've been extremely critical and low on Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. I do think the one thing that works in their advantage is I do expect an uptick in quarterback play this year. I mean, their quarterback play has just been awful. Their offense in general has just been awful. If they can do anything on the offensive side to match what's been a pretty good defense over the years, I think they can be respectable. 13 for me probably is That's definitely as high as I would want to go. Again, like you said, if I could manually adjust, I'd probably knock them back a few spots here. You've got them at 16. That feels about right to me. 23 for the AP poll, though. That's really surprising to me, and also like I think that is probably a little bit low. I mean, they've played Alabama great. They beat them a couple years ago. They played them great last year when Jalen Milroe had to come in for Alabama. Like they've played them well, but then they lose to bad teams all the time, and it's just they're just so baffling of a team. Like I don't know how to get a handle on them. What are your thoughts there?
For the same reasons that I'm not surprised the AP has Washington where they do, it's why Texas A&M is where they are. So there's a large enough contingent of AP voters who are just looking at last year's record, making slight adjustments and saying, okay, here's where we're going to slot them in. And so there are many people that probably left Texas A&M clearly being number 23 off their ballot because they looked and say, they won 5 games last year. No way. I get the hype and recruits, and there's no way they won 5 games last year. From a power rating standpoint, and this surprised me a little bit, weighted 4-year K Forward rating 13th. So that's average, pretty good, average top 25. The recruiting rankings though, and again, this was that 2022 class, I think it was, that was the best class ever and all those things. I've got Texas A&M number 4 in my weighted 4-year recruiting rankings. Okay, there we go. And they're trending, they're down 1 spot from where they were a year ago. So they're trending the wrong way, but still number 4 is pretty darn good. I'm going to take a victory lap on Texas A&M. I don't do this often, but I took so much heat for Texas A&M last summer because I projected 8.1 wins for the Aggies. I was saying 8-4, probably what's going to be most likely for this team, 9-3 maybe, but I'll go 8-4. A&M fans crushed me again because they're coming off this best recruiting class we've ever seen and it's setting records everywhere. And this is going to be it. 2021 was the exception. Remember in 2020, the COVID year, we went 9-1 and we should have been in the playoff and we're going to be great and awesome. And so many A&M fans just gave it to me. I said, I get it. Okay. I'm just telling you, here's what it is. Here's what the numbers say. Nothing against A&M. It took them about 2 games to not hear from A&M fans anymore. And so at the end of the year, they win 5 games. That's minus 3.1 compared to what I expected. And my numbers look generous by the end of the year, suggesting they were going to win 8 games because everyone was saying they're going to win 10, 11, 12 games, go to the CFP. I said 8 games. That minus 3.1, 124th out of 133 teams. They were among my top 10 biggest underachievers of all of last season. I'm now projecting 7.7 wins for A&M. So I'm still very measured in my expectations for them because the schedule's so tough. This is a top 10 most difficult schedule in the entire country. Most schedules in the SEC West are, but this is a really good defense. I got this as a top 5, top 10 unit on defense, and the offense is what gives me concern. So reverse from what Washington was, I've got this offense around number 50. If they can be improved on offense, I know they brought in Petrino. Let's see if he's calling the plays. Talk about the quarterback plays, got to be improved because there's nowhere to go but up there. I agree with you. But if we look at the schedule, I make A&M as an underdog in 4 different games. Now, granted, 2 of them are 1-score games, so anything can happen there. But it's a tough schedule. A&M's got a lot of talent, but I need to see some stuff before I'm ready to kind of move them up a little bit. I think 16 is about right. 23, too low for the AP. And I'm not going to get bent out of shape. Yeah, I'm at 13. Like you said, if you could manually adjust a couple spots, I probably would too, but 13 is not outrageously high for a team that has this much talent. I mean, that's what power ratings are all about. And as you said, they're a habitual underachiever once the season starts. We'll see if it happens again this year or if they in Texas can get along and move in the right direction before they join up in the SEC next year.
Yeah, I've got them 3rd in my preseason defensive ratings, but 46th in on the offensive side. So again, 41st. If they can just get into like the 20 to 25 range on offense and keep in the top 5, top 10 on defense, I think they can be decent. Like you said, the schedule's tough. I project them at about 8.3 wins this year. So, I think they will be better this year. That may not be totally reflected in their record necessarily, just again because of the schedule. But I do think they'll be better this year than they were last year. I don't see them, contending for the SEC championship or playoff or anything like that. But I think they'll be better.
Yeah, I've got them with a 2% chance to win the SEC West and make it to Atlanta. That's behind Alabama at 65% and LSU at 31%. So certainly not seeing Atlanta in their future, but yeah, I expect they finished last year power rated 36 for me, which was their low mark since 2017. And then coming in this year, like I said, number 16. They only won 5 games last year, Tyler. You said it might not be reflected in their record. It better be reflected in their record. If this team wins 5 games again, I don't care what Jimbo's buyout is and how many guaranteed years, he's going to be gone if they go 5-7 again this year. So I've got a 95% chance that they win 6+ games this year. So a 1 in 20 chance that they go 5-7 or worse, I guess. We saw it last year. I'd be surprised if we saw it this year.
Yeah, no doubt. You said you had a couple of teams that you wanted to touch on. Who you got in mind?
All right. Well, I was gonna go Tulane, and I want to get to Tulane, but I'm going UTSA first, Tyler. So here's I'll set the stage for you on what I'm thinking here with UTSA. Tyler, I have them power rated number 59. You have them at 23.
Wow.
That is a huge discrepancy.
Yeah.
Sell me on UTSA, please. And then I'll give you some rationale for mine. But I'm very curious what you're looking at UTSA that makes you so optimistic on them. And I love it. Hey, meet, let's go, Road Runners, get it done. You got a quarterback entering year 15 at the school. So yeah, let's see what they got. But it'll be fun. What do you like about UTSA this year?
Yeah, so offensively, I've got them 15th in the country. Like they're in that North Carolina, Clemson, Oklahoma kind of range offensively. And again, a lot of that, I would say the majority of kind of the benefit of the doubt that they're getting in my numbers is from their development rating. Because last year, I'm looking it up here quickly. I mean, last year they were 12th in the country in correlation between their talent rating and their power rating. So they're getting a ton of credit. Coach Traylor's getting a ton of credit there for what he's able to do with the talent that he's got. And then in terms of their talent this year, let's take a quick peek. So, I mean, obviously, as you would expect from a G5 school, I mean, they're like not even anywhere near the top 50 in talent. I think their rating primarily is an optimistic projection on what Coach Traylor's been able to do, especially with the offense. If their defense is able to do anything, because defensively, I've got them 51st, so outside the top 50 on defense. So I mean, that's holding them back. I mean, imagine if their defense was around 30, how high their power rating would be for me. So I'm very curious. I went on a Tulane podcast a few weeks ago, and those guys were killing me for having UTSA ahead of them. So I get it. I'm sure you probably feel the same way with your numbers. I love Tulane too, but UTSA, again, I say this all the time. This is like my catchphrase, but like the numbers are the numbers. I don't have a whole lot to add there. The numbers love their offense and their development.
No, fair enough. Not asking for you to change numbers or do anything. I just need an explanation, which you gave, and I'll respect that. I'll disagree, just based on my numbers, and I'm personally looking forward to the times when we disagree. I think that's much more fun than when we're in agreement on everything all the time. So this is one I definitely want to talk about. I get it. I understand why you have them where you do. I'll quickly give you my numbers just as a point of comparison. I also like their offense more than their defense. I have their offense right now as a top 40 unit. So I don't have them as high as you, but I have them in the top 40. The defense, I also don't have them as high as you. I have them mid 80s on defense. This is largely driven, Tyler. Their returning production is good. I'll take that, but their weighted 4-year K forward rating or ranking 73rd, which is up 19 spots from last year. So they are certainly moving in the right direction in that regard, playing much better recently as a program. And their weighted 4-year recruiting ranking, number 70, which is up 5 spots from a year ago. So they're trending in the right direction, and their preseason power ratings in my system will be continue to trend upward. But as it stands right now, I have them number 59. Real concerns about this defense. I only have the defense as the 6th best in the conference. So this is a real concern for me. Offense is a top 3 unit in the conference, and I do still have UTSA with a 32% chance to make the American Athletic Conference championship game. I have SMU and Tulane as the 2 favorites to get there. Tulane is the better team, but with a harder schedule, so give SMU a slight edge to get to the game, and then Memphis also with a 32% chance, just like UTSA. So to me, that's where I am with UTSA. The other one, Tulane, I'll take them first since I brought them up. I have them at number 44. So it's not quite as like the gap for me with UTSA was even larger, having them at 59 and you at 23. They're 20 spots off from the AP. And I think I tweeted about this when the coaches put theirs out. I think they had them at like 22 or something. And my question with some people was, are you? Can you look at me with a straight face and say that there are only, let's use the AP, 23 teams in the entire country that you would have Tulane as an underdog against on a neutral field? No team outside of the top 24 here, AP poll voters, would you favor against Tulane on a neutral field? And if you can look at me with a straight face and say, "Yep, that's my opinion. That's what I believe," then we'll just agree. We'll just agree, and we'll move on with our lives, and we'll go from there. I don't think most voters could do that, which again goes back to what are we voting on as humans in an AP poll? What is the objective? I don't think people have a clear understanding of that. So you get these differing viewpoints, and people are voting in different manners, which I think is catastrophic for the integrity of a poll. But that is what it is. I have Tulane at 44. Tulane fans hated me this summer because I don't have them power rated in the top 25, and they've just had this great year last year and all those things. As I scroll back really quickly, Tulane fans, I'll remind you, I had you resume ranked number 15 last year. But even with that, I had you power rated number 25. So, I mean, end of last year, I had you power rated number 25. I think your team last year was more talented than the team you have this year. Certainly, you can prove me wrong. You were one of my biggest overachievers last year. You had 10 regular season wins. That was 3.7 more than I projected in the preseason. That was number 5 overall in my biggest overachievers list. So phenomenal year. But because you overachieved relative to my expectations and you climbed to, I'll say, only 25th in the power ratings, because Tulane fans said that wasn't high enough, I am expecting a step back this year. You were 25 last year, and I think you overachieved. My number suggests you might regress a bit this year and come back to the field a little bit. But with that being said, as I look at the projected point spreads for Tulane, I only have them as an underdog in one game. And that's week 2. They have Ole Miss coming to town. Talk about a big time game for Tulane. You get Ole Miss coming to your stadium. That's going to be awesome and a ton of fun. I like Ole Miss in that one by about 5.5 points. But outside of that, I've got Tulane favored at every other game they play. I've got a 2% chance to go 12-0, a 12% chance to go at least 11-1. So Tulane very well could be. Now, it's not the most difficult schedule in the world. It's on the easier end as schedules go. Tulane very well could be in my most deserving top 25 by the end of the year, as they were last year. From a power rating standpoint, I'm just not there yet. And so it's nothing against Tulane. Their fans have given it to me. I take it. It is what it is. The numbers are the numbers. As you said, I like that. I'm going to say that more now. But that's where I have Tulane. What about you, Tyler? Are they sniffing around your top 25, or are they a bit farther back?
So Tulane's really interesting in my numbers, because I've got them 33rd from a power rating standpoint. But then when you looking through their schedule, I've actually got them as a favorite. So you're going to like this. I've actually got them as a 1.5 point favorite at home against Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is a team here ranked in the top 25 that I have much lower, not much lower, but I'm lower on than you and the AP. I actually have Tulane as a favorite in every game. However, their season win total is 9.5. I actually only have them at about 9.1, just the way the math works out when you add it all up. So interesting there that I've got them as a favorite in 12 games, but only project them to win, 9. So interesting kind of math dichotomy there, but I like Tulane. My numbers kind of say that their defense is going to be the strength of the team this year. So if they can kind of get it rolling, obviously replacing Tyjae Spears is not going to be an easy task. He was awesome last year. And just to butter Tulane fans up even more, if they've been following this channel, the college football playbook channel, Mark and I gave out Tulane plus 2.5 in the Cotton Bowl against USC, which was a roller coaster of a game, but Tulane pulls that out and wins outright. So we've been on the Tulane bandwagon for a while. I don't have them in the top 25, but my numbers do really respect them.
Man, we are going to have a lot of fun conversations about the top end of the G5 this year. I can already tell. You said you have the defense as a better unit. I've got the offense as a better unit here. I got concerns about the defense. I got Ole Miss favored. You got Tulane. Man, we're going to have some fun talking about those, Tyler. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really fun 2023 season.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait. Were there any other, before we get out of here, were there any other teams that you wanted to touch on here that were ranked or not ranked in the AP top 25?
No, I don't think so. I actually was surprised as I was going through putting the graphic together, Tyler, how many similarities I had with the AP poll. To me, hey, maybe the AP polls are getting a little bit smarter about how they're voting after I bashed them for a whole episode here. But there were only 2 teams that the AP had in their poll that I didn't, and that was Tulane and Iowa at 25, and they did not include Texas Tech, who I have at 23, and Florida, who I have at 25. I told you I have Tulane at 44. I have Iowa at 26, I do believe, as I double check that quickly. Yeah, I have Iowa at 26. So again, Tulane to me is the outlier here. I think I saw the AP had Texas Tech maybe at 26, right? They're receiving votes. I don't know where they have Florida. Florida's an interesting team for me this year. We'll see how it goes. Very difficult schedule, most difficult in the country by my numbers. So no, all in all, after I've said I don't really understand human polls or put much stock in them, there is some correlation there. So credit where credit's due to them on that. But all in all, preseason power ratings, polls, they're really fun fodder. It gives us something to talk about. We're going to start playing games here in about a week and a half, and everybody gets into it in week one in about two and a half weeks. And so that's where rubber meets the road, and we're going to get some in-season data, and things are really going to heat up. But as things stand, I like where we're at. We talked about kind of the ones that have the biggest discrepancies, and I think there's reasons for that, whether it's the pollsters and their thoughts or our numbers and how we validate those. So yeah, man, I'm good. I'm good.
Cool. One thing that did jump out to me that I was glad to see is that we both do have Florida, similarly ranked, because I've taken some heat on Twitter already for having Florida so high. People were telling me that they're, quote, a dumpster fire this year, but I've got some faith in Billy Napier there. So very, very curious. Florida's a team that I'm very curious about this year. I think they can and will be better, but to your point, they have a very difficult schedule. So what is that going to mean when it's all said and done? I don't know. But man, this was fun. I'm already looking forward to episode 2. So just to give you guys kind of an understanding of what to expect from us going forward. We'll be on a twice per week cadence, I think, is the plan right now. So, we'll do an early week episode where we're going to recap, what happened the previous weekend. And then we'll do a later in the week episode where we're looking ahead to what's coming that weekend. So hope you'll join us. I'm really looking forward to it. Really excited to be here with Kelley all season, talking power ratings and just college football. It's fun. And Kelley, again, great to be here with you and looking forward to episode 2 already.
No, this is awesome, Tyler. I'm excited. Parting thought here based on something you said there. Those people on Twitter who are telling you they're a dumpster fire, this team, that team, whatever. I always respond, hey, fair points. I like what you're saying there. It makes sense. I could be wrong. I'm wrong sometimes. My numbers are right more than they're wrong. That's how we get to where we are. But I am wrong sometimes. We miss on teams. That's okay. It happens. But more times than not, follow the numbers, follow the math, and it'll lead you to the right place. So that's what I'll say as a parting shot. I'm very happy to be on this with you, Tyler. Looking forward to it. The 2 episodes a week is going to be awesome. Looking backwards, looking forwards, just like power ratings and resume rankings, man. It's going to be great. Can't wait for it. This has been so much fun. Excited to be part of the team here at Saturday Glory.
Cool. All right. Well, I hope you guys will stick with us, and we will see you for episode 2.